The offseason for the Jaguars is in full swing, and we just want to keep our coaching staff intact. I'll talk to you about that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguar.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that's found on the Locked On Podcast Network, which is the #1 sports podcast network. Glad to make you our first listen here. All right, everydayers, we appreciate you joining us each and every day, wherever you get your podcast. Thank you very much. And if you look down in the description, you'll see the Everydayers Club. You can actually join that and get some ad-free audio versions of the show, as well as access to our merchandise store. Make sure you tap in and check that out. Here's what we're going to run down. We're going to run down and talk about coaches. Grant Udinsky and Anthony Campanile, they're still on the interview circuit. Man, we want that to end so they can come on back. Needs and wants, how you sort those two things out when you go shopping for players, and the visual impact that the conference championship games had on your psyche as Jaguar fans moving forward. All right, let's start at the very top. Coaches, Udinsky and Campanile. Anthony Campanile interviewed for the Dolphins job, which went to his former boss, Jeff Hatley. Interviewed for the Baltimore Ravens job, which went to one of their former assistants, Jesse Minter. And he's interviewed now with the Arizona Cardinals. And this one has me a little bit scared because the Cardinals are looking for leadership. And guys like Anthony Campanile are definitely a leader. Grant Udinsky, as of this morning, before I recorded this, removed himself from consideration for the Cleveland Browns head coaching position, but re-up with the Jaguars for a bump in salary, and he'll be back unless he gets the Buffalo Bills job, which the Bills, right before I recorded, just released that they have completed an interview with Grant Udinsky. And then people like Daniel Jeremiah, who I respect, said that basically he never met him, but he's heard from a lot of people, a lot of smart people that swear by Grant Udinsky and how he would be a good fit up in Buffalo. I think he'd be a good fit in Buffalo, but I know he'll be a good fit back here in Jacksonville. And I know Campanile will be a good fit back here in Jacksonville too. I get why fans are tripping a little bit. It's because when the Jaguars finally do something right, now everybody that wants to try to do what they did right, instead of them doing it on their own, they're coming over here and they're getting your people. We can't even get to the playoffs and fight for our own identity for a few years before somebody comes in here and starts to swipe away our talent and our folks. And Jaguar fans are upset, and they should be. But they also should understand that this is the nature of the business. This is what happens when you turn your franchise into a franchise that wins games. People want to be like you. They want your mojo. They want your sauce. Whatever it was, and this is the thing, too, about the narrative that had been said about the Jaguars for so long about a lot of people. Folks thought this was a complete dumpster fire. While it was not, I probably said it was at some point because I knew that they had one or two things that they just absolutely had to get rid of before this team was going to move forward and be successful. Nothing personal. It's just that it wasn't blending in with everything else too much. And it was just, I wouldn't even want to think about all the reasons why the Jaguars were losing, but y'all can see now it wasn't just totally because of players. And it wasn't just totally because of coaching. It was kind of a thing that had nothing to do with how good the players were or how the coaching was. Because to be honest, Doug Pederson won 9 games in 2 of his 3 years here. They only had one bad season. They had a season that started out bad that ended up good, then one that started out good and ended up bad, and then one that started out bad and ended up bad. And one of the reasons is they kept firing coaches, like getting rid of the wrong cargo. I'm not saying that those coaches were great, but what I'm telling you is I think the coaches that they had on the initial season, you don't win 9 games by accident and then do it again. And then when you try to get rid of stuff, You actually get rid of some of the people who helped you win those 9. Not saying that those 9 and the other rest of the coaches could have turned those 9 games into 13. That is not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that the reason why it went back to 4 games and looked god awful, because at least the first 2 years there was alignment because those guys had a plan on how they wanted to do things, and then you came in with Ryan Nielsen, and then you see what happened. You're trying to fix something with the wrong stuff. So what happens is the Jaguars do get the right stuff, and they totally turn this franchise around. It probably was a 9-win team. And then when you add Travis Hunter and better drafting, before they ever even played a game, this was probably a 10 or 11-win team. Turns out it was a 13-win team because they got even more stuff correct than you could even imagine, stuff that you didn't even realize was wrong. I often talked about alignment, but I didn't even know exactly what it would look like when you have it. I just knew what it looked like when you didn't, right? So now you got 2 coaches that are assistant coaches that are being courted by other people. And this goes to show that it doesn't matter if your coach is an offensive-minded coach or a defensive-minded coach. The one thing that is constant is you get the offensive-minded coach, he is in cahoots. He is tied at the hip with Trevor Lawrence, and that's the coach combination stuff that I've been talking about for a long, long time. And this gives them some continuity in the offense because they're going to run Liam Cohen's offense. But it doesn't mean that you still can't get stuff to happen that you don't want to happen, like your defensive coaches. James Gladstone mentioned that their defense would evolve. They've already added a different secondary coach. We talked about that last week. All right. And I don't want to screw his name up, but I know it's like Uchi, right? I'm trying to pronounce the Jaguars' new run game coordinator, who has the offensive line background, and he's known Liam since Liam was a pup, right? They've added that. So they are not resting, right? I think everyone that they tried to hire before is someone that once they become open, the Jaguars are going to hire them. They're going to bring them in because they know they add something to the flavor here. And I don't think this was a replacement for anybody either. I just think it's an addition that they wanted to add last year, and they added it this year. I'm going to give you his name real quick because I don't want to mispronounce it, because y'all know I am known to mispronounce some games. All right, so let me run through the Jaguars coaching staff. They have Jay Kaiser, who's the assistant to the head coach, John Dykema, who's a senior director of football strategy and game management, and then game day operations is Josh Lima. Got Grant Udinsky. Shane Walden is the pass game coordinator. Quarterbacks coach is Spencer Whipple. Chad Morton is the run game coach, and it's actually not even updated on the it's not updated yet on the coaches roster. But the reason why I want to read that roster out to you is because remember when I said those teams, or if you don't, I've often said that the teams that have an offensive-minded coach as a play caller, I've often said that a team like that, what they needed to do was you stack guys behind them. There's a whole bunch of guys behind Liam Cohen that know exactly what Liam Cohen wants to run. So if you lose Grant Udinsky, there's somebody else that you can bring in, either inside or outside. I wouldn't be shocked if they did lose Udinsky and they brought Shieldhouse in from the Rams, who's also a candidate to be interviewing for a lot of head coaching jobs, because it's just about alignment, man, and it's about wanting to do things a certain way, and you trust and know the guys that can teach it the way you want it to be taught. So that's why, even though I love those guys being a part of this and I want to keep the train moving, there is a little bit of flex in having to teach somebody else and having to trust another voice from the standpoint of the players. I do want them to stay consistent, but I just can't find myself and force myself into sounding anything like Tampa Bay fans that were mad that Liam was getting opportunities last year. I just can't. And I know they'll say it's because he went against his word and all that. No, he didn't. It was an opportunity of a lifetime. He negotiated the way he had to negotiate, and then they got a deal that turned out without Trent Baalke to be a very, very good move for not only Liam, but for the Jaguars as well. And that's what this is about. It's about what's best for these guys moving forward. All right, let's discuss it. Let's talk about needs and wants. It's time for evaluation. The Jaguars are already out there on the circuit getting to it. We'll talk about needs and wants and how these teams can figure out a way how to get better while retaining the guys that are already good. We'll discuss that more here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch, now's the perfect time to close it out strong. Prize Picks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections, no drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the playoffs. It is incredibly easy to get started with Prize Picks. Pick 2 or more players and choose more or less on their projections, and then watch what happens. Ching, 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 ching. If you're right, download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. And today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time. With Robinhood prediction markets, it's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell positions live all game long. You use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator, play by play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, we're moving and grooving here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. Once again, I'll mention, make sure you hit up the Everyday Club down in the description wherever you watch or listen to this podcast. You want a little bit more, Wig is able to give you each and every day. Make sure you tap into the Everydayers Club. Lots of good information over there, man. So go ahead and hit that down in the description wherever you watch or listen, and make sure you tap in. It's time to be looking around, man, for talent. I guess I'll start with free agents first, like I already threw out a couple of names, but I'm in a little bit of a dilemma, and I kind of not necessarily want to help, because by the time y'all see this, I won't even be here. I won't be sitting behind this desk anymore. But I will tell you what the dilemma is. The dilemma for me this year, believe it or not, with them winning, is really trying to find and strike a balance between needs and wants. And it's harder to do this year for me, because when a team is bad and they underachieve, it's very, very, simple. They're going to be picking a little bit higher. That best player available thing really, really, really does come into fruition and into play. And then primarily a team that's not very good usually needs a whole bunch of stuff. And it's really, really hard to pinpoint one thing. But I think it's more difficult when teams are very successful during the regular season like the Jaguars are, and then having to go through and nitpick things from a want and need standpoint and make sure you do it correctly. Because when a team wins 13 games, they didn't do a whole lot that you can't be happy with. And I think the teams that win all the time, and when I say win a lot, I mean are always relevant during the playoffs and the regular season, even if they don't win a championship. Like last week, I did this thing where I was talking about teams that commit to a quarterback, even if the quarterback has yet to really show that he is someone they need to be committed to. Sometimes the fact that you did commit him will allow you to build your team And then if that guy turns out to be right, cool. If not, then you built the team for somebody else, and it's easier to go out and find a guy to plug and play. So now I just think you almost have to have a trained eye. It's almost like watching two boxers fight. You see them in preliminary fights and they both whitewash an opponent. And then sometimes I can really look and say, there's no way that guy can beat the other dude because of the matchup, right? And people go, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, you could see certain things. It's harder for me in a team sport when the Jaguars have had people that contribute each and every week in different ways. It's really hard for me to it feels like you're throwing somebody out to the trash heap when it's time to improve. So I can understand how coaches and players or coaches and personnel people have a really, really hard time. Like you saw Liam, he loved that team last year. The bottom line, though, is that team was not good enough. And you have to, they just weren't good enough. So I applaud the Jaguars brass if their goal is to win Super Bowls as opposed to just celebrating the fact that they got this team back to relevance and out of football purgatory, right? I applaud them for not sitting there going, that was a nice little first step. Then maybe, I don't know what they're saying privately, but it looks like to me, this is a team full of dudes that want more, that are disappointed with how things went, that didn't want it to end. So that even proves my point. The point is they're going to be going out looking for dudes to replace guys that they quote unquote love coaching. And you got to be careful because sometimes you got to make these decisions, especially if a dude is a pending free agent. Like, okay, we might be able to find a dude we think is more talented, but he's a better fit. And the risk has to be adjudicated by the fact that we already know what that guy can do. And what he did got us and made us have a deep run in the playoffs. And if things go one way or the other, we can, we get Travis and you get Jordan Lewis back. And I don't know, man, maybe this thing looks a little bit better. I think you have to get to the point where the what ifs and buts go away. So you go for a very, very talented player at a position that that needs to be upgraded, and you trust yourself. It's not a crapshoot to the people that do it every day. I know we talk about free agency in the draft. Oh, it's just luck. It's just a crapshoot. There's an element to it where you have to be fortunate and lucky. But I think the people that do it real well, the people whose jobs depend on getting these players, I know those teams that are sitting there going to the Super Bowl, they're not sitting there thinking that their personnel department was lucky that they got the people that they got. No, they think they went out and did them, and they lined the coaches up, and everyone worked on the relationship, the back and forth, the communication. Players bought in with both the Patriots and the Seahawks, and even to the teams that lost. Just think about it. The Jaguars lost 2 weeks ago, and guess what happened? Those teams, the Jaguars were one of those same teams. They bought in, they did everything. They had a magical run, just wasn't good enough. So that's why I think it could get easier when you start thinking about it to move on from certain players. Monteric Brown, Dewey Wingard, where you go, we need to upgrade. Juan Smoot, all of those dudes, man, they played a part in it. Maybe even Devin Lloyd. Maybe, hey, the money might not allow us to keep him because he had such a great year. Maybe the money doesn't allow us to keep him. Maybe somebody prices us out of it. And teams do that on purpose. So will the Jaguars do that to somebody else? Those are the things you have to wonder. Like, what are they going to go out and get? Because we're doing this from a position that we normally don't do this, right? And then they don't have a first-round pick. So it gets really, really more difficult. Like, they're not going to have any impact on day one unless they make another trade in the draft. So what can they do in free agency to really, really change this football team? Well, that depends on how they feel about the guys that they have to make decisions about as well. So it's not as easy. I want y'all to know, I've kind of been going through it a little bit because when I do this, I don't want to just do it willy-nilly. I really want to do this from a standpoint of having some educated thought behind it. And the one thing about them being new is it's hard to figure out what they're trying to do or how they feel about the players that they have. It's a little easier this year based on the fact that we saw the demonstrated performance from those players, but it's still hard to figure out, and it should be It should be, but I think it's just pride and ego because I want to make sure I get it right for the listeners here and not just be spewing out just names for people to get their pipe dreams up about that the Jaguars will never, ever even touch. Maybe the Jaguars aren't even looking at those positions. Like last year, I had nose guard all over the place and they didn't touch it. And rightfully so. There's some people that still believe they need to touch it, but they didn't. And they might touch it. And that's the point that I'm making. They might go out and get another player who can play nose and who can play side by side with Devon Hamilton whenever they need him to. Maybe they get that versatility, the same versatility they have on the offensive line. Maybe they go looking for it on the defensive line, and that lands them a Darrell Jackson in the second round from Florida State, all 6'6", 320 pounds of it. So there's a lot of ways that you can look at it. Doesn't get any easier, but we'll talk about it. How did the visual impact from what you saw in the conference games change your mind about what the Jaguars need or don't need? I'll tell you about mine just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, man. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper, but it wasn't the right fit, and you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. Use Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, moving along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. Talking about, in this segment, you watched the games this weekend. Most Jaguar fans watched both conference championship games, particularly the AFC championship game in a blizzard in Denver. And the first thing that they said was, we could have beat both these teams. I agree. Just doesn't work like that. Because we didn't beat the team that lost to one of those teams. So that's why, obviously, the Jaguars were not in the playoffs. But you can still watch that and say, okay, what can we learn? We learned that, well, playing in the snow is different from not playing in the snow. That's one thing. But the other thing is you got to be built for the circumstances. And both of those teams yesterday, defensively, were built for those circumstances. The Jaguars can match those teams, I believe, on the front end. I don't believe they can match those teams on the back end. I'm talking about the AFC teams, not anywhere else. I think they have to be healthy in order to. Like, you get your Gonzalez, you get your Gonzo if you got Travis Hunter available. I believe that. I believe you get potentially your Patrick Surtain if you have Travis Hunter available. And that's the value in having a dude like that on your team. When people want to argue the value of a corner versus the value of the wide receiver. Well, you saw the value of the corner yesterday. And then again, and in the NFC championship game, you saw the value of teams that have corners that aren't good across the board. Because I think Kobe Durant is a good player for the Rams, but I just think the rest of those dudes for the Rams are not up to snuff. And you saw that yesterday, that when they needed to make stops, they couldn't do it. And even the Seahawks guys were struggling some because Matthew Stafford was doing them, but he was doing it with a Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer, another dude that's a first ballot Hall Pro, and then another Hall of Famer, even if some people don't believe Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Famer. I do. And it came down to a dude dropping the ball. The tight end catches that ball. This is a whole different game because I think he walks in for a touchdown. Havenstein, I think he walks in for a touchdown, and then they have to do what was probably impossible, and that is hold off the Seahawks from going down and scoring points, because the Seahawks were moving the ball at will against the Rams in the second half. So for all of this stuff, thinking that it just comes down to just quarterback play, it doesn't. And that's why sometimes people say the quarterback gets too much blame, but he also gets too much credit. Because Drake May did the unthinkable. He went 3-0 in the playoffs, and he had 6 fumbles and 2 interceptions. That's unreal. That's unreal. And he's 3-0. That's because he has a coach in Mike Vrabel that, although they have the ability to throw the ball, and they won 14 games in the regular season this year and now have won 16 games, and they have the ability to throw the ball, they figured out how to get out of there with a win yesterday in a blizzard. And that's what you have to do. You got to figure out how to get out of there with a win and move on in advance. Because if you don't move on in advance, I don't care how good you think you are, it does not matter. So seeing that game yesterday I saw defense. I saw both defense in both games, except the losing Rams. I didn't see much defense at all. But you did see the importance of having special teams. You did see the importance of taking points in the playoffs. That reared its ugly head again twice yesterday. And I know the people that believe you have to go for it and be aggressive, they're not going to look at it as something that may have cost both the Rams and the Broncos a win, but I'm going to look at it that way. And I'm wondering if coaches are going to learn their lesson or if they're not. We're going to keep trusting analytics instead of trusting your gut. Like the piece of paper that on analytics doesn't tell you there's a blizzard coming. Take the points now. Because pretty soon people ain't going to be able to score or run on this field. So that's what the piece of paper doesn't tell you. So I wonder if a lot of these new school coaches are going to start going towards gut feeling right now, what's going on in the game, as opposed to worrying about what the piece of paper told you, because the piece of paper probably did not come with a weather report on it. So hopefully we can look at that and go, yeah, the Jaguars could have beat both of them, but still not rest on our laurels and understand that the Jaguars are going to continue to improve and get better this coming season. And it allows us to have the imagination of, okay, where will they get better? And it's probably not at everywhere that you think is weak, because everywhere you think the Jaguars are weak, there might not be a whole bunch better out there, and they might have to improve that from within. And it still is a competition. Like you got to wait till they get close to you in the draft room, or they got to agree to your terms. So there's a chance that even if it is there, it's not there in abundance enough that the Jaguars are going to get each and everything that they want. So you have to start prioritizing it, and you have to still improve. So keep that in mind as we talk about prospects, and we'll continue to do that more and more. Squad show's coming up today. We'll hit that a little bit, talking about some guys. But mainly, just keep your eyes and ears open. Watch the positions. And when you do see the positions that the Jaguars are talking to people, whether it's at the Shrine, all of these all-star games, the Senior Bowl is starting this week. It does not matter. It does not mean that that's a position that they are chasing after. It's weird when you think about it. They're just chasing talented players, not positions. And hopefully some of those talented players line up in the positions where the Jaguars have needs. Make sure you tap in all week. We'll be talking about it here as we continue to go through the more and more, talking about these coaching changes, as well as what the Jaguars will do in free agency and the draft. Free agency comes first. We'll make sure we nail that for you here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We'll see you later on the Squad Show. Take care.